In relation to direct foreign investment from China, what I think is missing from the debate currently is an understanding of Australia's foreign investment guidelines. They are rather opaque. There is that discretion on the part of the Treasurer to reject or accept a recommendation from the Foreign Investment Review Board based on the national interest. Now, the national interest can mean different things at different times. It's a very broad discretion, but it's also very opaque because they don't have to give reasons. And I think that what is needed right now is a much clearer statement of Australia's attitude towards direct foreign investment from state-owned enterprises, from sovereign wealth funds, and particularly for Chinese investment. Now, we all know about the Chinalco deal. Essentially, what happened there is the government did not make the recommendation. It was pushed out month after month until events overtook it, until the board and the shareholders intervened. And that gave an impression that the government wasn't prepared to deal with the issue. They were just pushing it off until other events overtook it. So I think that we need some clarity now as to what our attitude towards foreign investment is. Now, let me tell you, I come from Western Australia. That state's economy has been built on direct foreign investment from Asia, from Japan, from South Korea, and more recently from China. So I encourage and welcome foreign investment from China and from other Asian countries. And I think that with the right guidelines in terms of control and management, it can be beneficial for Australia and for China. And that's why I think a free trade agreement is so important, because you could actually put within a free trade agreement your foreign investment guidelines with that country. So you could actually clarify, without even changing the Foreign Investment Review Board rules, you'd actually clarify our investment arrangements with Australia and China in a free trade agreement. And can I point out that Australians are very keen to invest in China as well. And there's a great opportunity there, which is not always available to us. So this is two-way. And I think in a free trade agreement, you could actually achieve it. You could actually achieve the appropriate guidelines needed for direct foreign investment from China into Australia and vice versa.
Hi. Stephen Fitzgerald, he recently wrote an article on the East Asia Forum. And he was comparing institutionalised dialogues that we have with the US compared to China, and basically saying, with the US, we've got G'day USA, there's the Australia-US leadership dialogue. I guess continuing on from the point of dialogue, if Liberals were in power now, what would be a type of institutionalised dialogue you think that there is room for now in the Sino-Australian relationship?
Well, I think Stephen Fitzgerald made an extremely valid point. We even have an Australia-Israel dialogue now that has... there's been one dialogue in Tel Aviv, or was it Jerusalem, and then they're having one at the end of the year in Sydney. Now, Australian-Israel relationships are important, but I would suggest that in the scheme of things, an Australia-China dialogue would be extremely significant for us. And I think his idea is something well worth pursuing. In fact, I'll be in Beijing later this year. No, in fact, in about 10 days, 2 weeks. What day is it? Yes, in a very short period of time. You've got no idea what it's like in Parliament. The time just flies. So I'll be in Beijing and obviously looking to establish those sorts of discussions so that we can lead to a situation where a dialogue would be possible. Another achievement that I think is often overlooked is Australia's entry into the East Asia Summit. I think that was an extremely significant event. The United States is not in it. And let's face it, it's easier to be in forums where the United States is there. Australia's always there. The US is there, Australia's there. But the East Asia Summit, we were invited to join. I think that was extremely significant. And my view on the architecture of the region is very different from that articulated by Prime Minister Rudd. First, I would not have announced that I was going to reorganise the architecture of the region before I had consulted with the countries in the region, the countries whose architecture I was proposing to rearrange. Secondly, I would be very wary of trying to suggest that there's a one-size-fits-all forum that will suit the different needs, requirements, experiences of the countries in the Asia-Pacific. They are completely different nation-states in so many ways, and to suggest that there's one forum that will deal with it all suggests that you're not focusing enough on the differences within Asia, and I think that shows a lack of respect. And I draw on my own experience. I mentioned the network of law firms in the Asia-Pacific. Let me tell you how it actually came about. The American firms and Clayton Utz in Australia decided that, gee, we're getting a lot more work in the Asia-Pacific, our clients are doing a lot more work there. Let's have a network of law firms. So we thought, what a great idea. So we picked out the firms that we liked in Japan and South Korea and Thailand, and then said, okay, we're going to have a network of firms. And they said, hang on a minute, perhaps you'd like to ask us who we'd like to have as our sister firms in each country. And it was sort of, back to the drawing board. And we then sat down, as we should have in the first place, and spoken to different firms in each country and said, what do you think of this idea? Would you like to join? And then they actually came up with who they thought would be better law firms or a better fit in different countries. And we had a particularly interesting discussion about China, because at that stage the Chinese legal system was virtually closed. This is early 90s, virtually closed to outside law firms. And the Americans were very keen on having an American law firm in Beijing as our sister law firm. But in fact, it was our law firm in Taiwan who said, no, that would be a very bad idea. I think you should find a homegrown firm in Beijing and cultivate that relationship, which is what happened, and it's been a great success. Just translate that small experience into what Mr. Rudd tried to achieve with the Asia-Pacific community, and I think you can see that it will be fraught with danger. It has not been enthusiastically received, and so often with these things, it's not the idea, it's the way you go about it. It's what you say as much as what you're trying to achieve. And I think we started off on the wrong foot. We've now got the new Japanese government saying that they'd like to do this with the East Asia Summit and have a different form of architecture. Singapore's obviously very keen on APEC. Other countries want to have a foot in different forums depending upon the circumstances. They like to have a forum with the US in it sometimes they don't. They like to have a forum with Burma in it sometimes they don't. So I think it would be very wise if we just sat back and worked more diplomatically through the diplomatic channels to come up with a set of ideas that would appeal to the Asia-Pacific. I suspect it will be something along the lines of what the Japanese are suggesting, an East Asia, an expansion of the East Asia Summit.